Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ecosperity. We're so excited to be here, SMBC as headline sponsors of Ecosperity. And thank you for the Temasek team for helping organize this fantastic event. Before the plenaries kick off soon, here at the Action Hub, we are talking about strategies for climate resilience in Singapore. My name is Priya Bellino, head of the Sustainability Solutions Group at SMBC for Asia Pacific. At SMBC, we're committed to achieving net zero by 2050, and we're passionate about driving sustainable solutions and are well on our way in investing 50 trillion yen in sustainable finance by 2030. Today, it is clear that globally, we are confronted with a well above 2 degrees Celsius future. So it is imperative that we collectively unpack the opportunities and challenges in financing climate adaptation and climate resilience strategies, particularly in urban spaces. I'm here with JTC's Assistant CEO, Calvin Chung. Thank you so much for joining us today. Calvin is here to talk about the critical role that JTC plays driving climate resilience here in Singapore. Calvin is in charge of the engineering and operations that span across the built environment value chain, from engineering, design, planning, construction, and facilities management of JTC's developments. Calvin's illustrious career includes being involved in several building and infrastructure works, such as Jurong Island, Tuas View Extension, and Marina Bay Cruise Center. Calvin spearheaded JTC's built environment digitalization and innovation agenda. He is the board treasurer of Singapore Green Building Council and was also JTC's chief sustainability officer. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Calvin this morning. So Calvin, thank you for being here. Could you share JTC's approach to sustainability and your key focus areas?
Maybe I do an introduction to JTC. We are a government body that takes care of the industrial infrastructure development in Singapore. We hold about 85% of all the industrial land in Singapore and about 12.5% of industrial space. Our function is pretty similar to a lot of developers, but as part of the government, we have additional roles. One of them is to push the top line through new projects and R&D, as well as to uplift the bottom end. So our customer base is a wide range from the MNCs all the way to the SMEs. Yeah. And I think the more unique part about JTC is that for our industrial space, we not only design, build, and maintain, we also rejuvenate the space. And if you look at Singapore's age, which is we are celebrating SG60 this year, many of our industrial land are reaching its end of life. So in JTC, we are also in this phase of planning for the next stage of industrial land development in Singapore. Yeah. And we will have to take care of climate resilience.
Thank you so much. And so what is climate resilience? And I wanted to share a little bit about what we mean and in the importance of climate resilience and adaptation. You know, we're talking about anticipating, coping, recovering, and adapting to the actual unanticipated impacts of climate change. Today, we talk about infrastructure resilience to rising sea levels and extreme weather here in Singapore. The IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, defines climate resilience as the capacity of social, economic, and environmental systems to cope with climate-related hazards, responding or reorganizing to maintain essential functions while also adapting, learning, and transforming. The projections from Singapore's third national climate change study includes projections of rising heat stress, sea level rise, annual rainfall, and rainfall expecting to intensify up to 92%, and with sea levels expected to rise up to 1.5 meters by the end of the century. Coastal protection and flood prevention are key adaptation measures the Singapore government are taking to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Across ASEAN, climate-induced flood, wind, and storm-related disasters account for over 75% of financial losses as a result of natural disasters in the last 5 years alone. So with that, Calvin, I'd love to ask you, when we look at the geopolitical and macroeconomic environment as it relates to sustainability, how does Singapore view this? From the election pressure from local voters, how can you shed some light on how the government-led initiatives or new laws which have generated a coordinated effort around climate resilience?
That's a very good question. First of all, I will to say that in Singapore, we view economic competitiveness as equally important as climate resilience. And we study the two topics holistically, both within the government, in consultation with businesses, as well as with the citizens, as more and more of them are more aware and concerned about the situation. So I would just want to take Jurong Island as an example. We all know that Jurong Island is a major piece of our manufacturing in Singapore. It's also a coastal island, which we reclaim and amalgamate 7 small islands into one. So as a result, it's very vulnerable to sea level rise. Yeah. And because of its importance, this is probably one of the first areas in Singapore where we study how we adapt our coastline for sea level rise holistically and as well as in detail, together in conjunction with, say, for example, the East Coast. Yeah. What this underlines is that it underscores our commitment and how we see the importance of manufacturing, not only from the business sustainability angle, but also from the climate resilience angle. So we have started developing policies and legislation to mandate sea level rise, or rather coastal defense in Singapore. And this will be probably disclosed soon. At the same time, we are also thinking and also sizing up, how do we fund this coastal adaptation? This is a very important part. My guess is that the government would likely play a huge role in this, but there will likely be some co-sharing mechanism just to make sure that everybody's skin is in the game. Yeah. So we are working very closely with PUB to develop the engineering solutions for Jurong Island. But other than for Jurong Island, we are also thinking of developing net zero zones in our flagship industrial estates. And the idea behind the net zero zone, basically, we are trying to find like-minded companies to share the sustainability burden together with JTC. So the idea here is that JTC will provide the most sustainable estate and buildings and infrastructure. The companies will try their best to green their manufacturing processes, and together we create a new net zero zone. All right.
That's amazing. I think some of these innovations are very cutting edge. But they're not. You make it sound easier than they look. So can you share your journey, Calvin, in terms of some of the challenges that you faced and how we can learn?
It's not easy at all. In fact, the journey is very long. I've been doing this for many years, almost 10 years by now, with sustainability as one of my key portfolio. And honestly, I've seen things move, but I also would have imagined myself doing more. But we are constrained by a lot of issues, and we're to tackle with cost being one of them. Yeah. I would say that the most important for any organization, be it at the country level, to the company level, or even to a small SME level, the top level commitment from the management is key. Yeah. That's because there's no silver bullet in achieving sustainability. It's all decks on hand. Every employee must accept the idea, embrace the idea, and we need to embrace sustainability into many of our processes. Yeah. And for a hardware developer like us, it starts with the design of the building. Yeah. And with the design of the building, that's key because, for example, how much of the spaces are aircon starts from the design. If we don't design the space for natural ventilation, we just have to spend more energy to air condition the space later on. especially in a climate like Singapore.
Thank you so much. I think this is a really interesting point, because what you're talking about it's not just about JTC, right? You start to create an ecosystem effect. And so I wanted to ask you, because you have some quite precise policies and expectations, by your lessees. So can you explain a little bit about, the effect that JTC has on the circular economy and the wider ecosystem?
Okay, I would like to cover that, but I think I forgot a point that I want to mention just now. Okay, because about the difficulty part. I think we have always tried our best to be, as just I mentioned, we try to naturally ventilate our areas. We end up with other problems we foresee, and this has been coming out very often. I just want to cite one example. Natural ventilation, but later on we end up with exposing a lot of our areas to wind-driven rain. Then we have to come back with a new mitigation, and now we are redesigning our buildings based on a new concept of that. So it's not a very straightforward road for us, and we just have to adapt along the way. And there's no top-line commitment, it's going to be tough. Yeah. And to your question about circular economy, I would want to first emphasize that environmental sustainability requires financial sustainability. Yeah, money is important for sustainability, and businesses have their objective of earning money. Their P&L is most important. So a lot of times we cannot just go for sustainability without not looking at the P&L of company and whether it fits their even their business model. I would say that if you look at circular economy, we don't always start everything based on sustainability. I just want to draw again your attention to the example of a Jurong Island. We started designing Jurong Island not purely because of sustainability. Rather, our concept is to put companies together, companies of the same value chain together, so that one company's product becomes the other company's raw material. And with that, they cut down on their business costs for the transportation, and they are more nimble in their business model because they can now ask the factory next door to produce whatever they need and the volume they need. As a result of that, Singapore created an ecosystem whereby the value chain companies are linked together very strongly. We anchor them strongly in Singapore. From the Singapore angle, it's harder for them to move. From the company's angle, it's cheaper to operate, despite our high labor cost and labor cost base. So, but it turns out that Jurong Island, this concept, is also good for sustainability. Yep. Because firstly, as I mentioned, you cut down on the carbon incurred for transportation. Yeah. Secondly, by putting all the similar companies together, we can aggregate demand for things like waste management as well as cooling. Yeah. And as a result, we save carbon further in this situation. And I think the last thing that I want to mention is that by putting them together, we also concentrate the waste stream. So later on, while Singapore embark on carbon capture, for example, it's actually easier for us because everything is in the same place. Yeah.
This is fascinating. I mean, I think that concentration effect is a lot of power. What lessons would you share for those of our audience who are visiting from overseas or across ASEAN? Are there some lessons that can be taken beyond Singapore shores?
As many of you might have known, we have co-developed the Suzhou Industrial Park as well as the Tianjin Ecocity in China. And both of these projects has a very strong sustainability focus. While JTC is a Singapore government entity, we don't actively develop projects overseas, but we do share our experience and our knowledge through various platforms, whether it's international conferences, whether it's through the professional bodies like the Institute of Engineers or the SGBC that I'm with, for example. And at the same time, we always develop our projects for sustainability with partners. So with companies like Savannah Jurong, CapitaLand, for example, they know everything we know, and they bring our knowledge of Singapore overseas. Yes.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you for the leadership there. I want to kind of go back to financing. As SMBC, this is core to our business. How have you seen, what's your perspective on sustainable finance as an enabler for climate resilience?
So I just want to emphasize again that to be environmentally sustainable, we need to be financially sustainable. They go hand in hand. And to keep the whole sustainability agenda going, it needs to be properly financed. And we're heartened to see that in the last 5 years, especially after COVID, there has been more interest from the finance sector to finance this portion of the work. Yeah, I have seen the quantum increase, as well as the scope of funding has also improved a lot. Yeah.
Actually, we pulled together some stats on this, and so sustainable finance in the real estate sector, specifically in Singapore, between 2020 and 24, totaled nearly $30 billion US. And it's been up and down in spots, but I think this is a really interesting story. Green bonds take the largest share, although green loans is where it really started. But I think what's an interesting observation is what we call use of proceeds products. So I wanted to ask you, but we're running out of time, so we just have a few minutes. What's missing from this picture? Because a lot of this is green buildings, green mark. That's quite straightforward, right?
So Priya, you are absolutely right. I think the financing for the simple stuff are about adequate. So I think there's no lack of funding over there. So now the financing, we have to be more sophisticated. We have to look at stuff that is a bit harder to quantify. Maybe I give you 3 examples. Yeah. One example is how, when we started planning for a building, we have to incorporate a lot of the design elements up front. And a lot of them equates to additional cost for the construction. Yeah, but yet it's very difficult to quantify the sustainable benefit. Yeah. So how do we finance this part? That's one of them. The next one would be we have an aging building stock in Singapore, and a lot of them are due for rejuvenation or even readaptation. Yeah. But as you all know, as a businesses, we will delay that as far down the road as possible because that's good for the balance sheet. Yeah. So how do we incentivize or even finance to bring some of this rejuvenation upfront earlier so that we can harness the benefit of a more sustainable building earlier? So that's the second one. And the third one I think would be the most difficult is how do we calculate the cost-benefit analysis? I think, I said that we have been making a lot of progress for the last 5 years. 5 years is still a very short period. And we lack data. And without data, that's not possible to set a proper baseline. And without a proper baseline, it's probably very difficult to compare and quantify what's the benefit. So I will urge that the industry collaborate and share data together so that we can shorten this process.
Okay, no, thank you. This is really interesting. Yesterday GIC put out a report estimating that the investment opportunity in climate adaptation reaches $9 trillion by 2050. And we recognize that at SMBC, that there's definite scope for that. And so I wanted to share here is our SMBC approach and our suite of sustainability solutions that we offer here in the region across green deposits, loan, trade finance, strategy support, and transition finance. And the reason why we have this sort of end-to-end support is to understand really what does it take not just to mitigate and reduce your emissions, but also to build resilience in your infrastructure, in your operations and activities. And there's so much that we can learn from JTC here. So I really wanted to thank you for this. We have some interesting case studies, across India, Vietnam, Philippines. So if you'd like to talk to us afterwards or through Ecosperity, please feel free to reach out. One of the things we've also been able to share is a nature finance report generated from last year's Ecosperity, and we do see opportunities for overlap between nature when it comes to sort of climate resilience and adaptation as well. With that, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to our audience. If you do have any questions, we'll be happy to take them kind of off the stage as Calvin and I step down. Huge round of applause to Calvin. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Priya.
Thank you again for your time, and enjoy these next few days at Ecosperity. I hope you enjoy the collaboration and the learning. Thank you so much.